This morning I want to talk about a defining moment. A defining moment. Our scriptures from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 19. I set before you life or death, blessing or curse. Choose life, that you and your children might live. In the Bible, after Solomon died, you even know your Bible history, the nation passed to his son Rehoboam. Rehoboam was a child of privilege with a perverse sense of entitlement. See, Israel was founded as a tribal confederacy. It was not kind of the way that people used to interpret the United States. It was a tribal confederacy in the sense that each tribe really had its own autonomy, and each tribe could govern themselves. But they agreed to act as a unified nation and accept the king because national unity afforded them the ability to have a central government, a central army, and a way to defend themselves against national enemies. Before, one tribe would be under attack and the other tribe would see the smoke rising up in the sky. And so they ain't got nothing to do with us. And so they would systematically move from tribe to tribe to tribe to tribe, particularly the Philistines. They've realized, they're not going to fight for each other, so we just fight a tribe at a time. We put them on the installment plan. And so they, out of necessity, came together to create a central government and to anoint a king. So each time a new king was installed, he had to go to be crowned by each tribe. Saul, David, and Solomon, they all had to go out and be crowned by each tribe. Now Rehoboam, he felt like he didn't need any permission from the tribes. And he disrespected the tribal leadership. See, they had complaints. They had issues. They wanted to address the issues before they crowned him. He didn't acknowledge the issues. He didn't have no sensitivity to their complaints. He didn't even respect their right to complain. He didn't want anything interfering with his program to make Israel great again. They complained of Solomon's policy of forced labor. See, Solomon had a policy where, in order to build up Jerusalem into a great city, now they were a great power, all the men in one tribe, all the men in each tribe had to spend a month in Jerusalem basically doing forced labor, which is basically slave labor, but it was for the nation. And the people said that, we got to neglect our families and our tribe for a whole month out of the year, and this is getting to be a hardship. And Jerusalem is looking spectacular, but things are hard where we live. And we want some new consideration for this and do this a new way. And they said, if you promise to treat us better, we will serve you as our king. And after a few days, Rehoboam said, let me think about it. And after a few days, he came back with his answer. He decided to double down on his father's oppressive policies and said, if my father beat you with whips, I will beat you with scorpions. Now, they didn't know it at the time, but this decision set in motion a series of events, and their country would never be the same. 10 of the 12 tribes broke off and established their own country. And Rehoboam was left with 2 little bitty tribes. So you went from having one great, strong nation that became 2 weak and vulnerable nations that opened themselves to attack from their enemies. And within a few decades, the Assyrians invaded and wiped the 10 tribes off the face of the earth. Nobody knows what happened to them. History, they are lost to history. Nobody knows what happened to them. You got Jews that ended up in Ethiopia some in Russia. They show signs that they might be related to those that had been wiped out, but nobody really knows what happened to those 10 tribes. They were totally wiped out, never to be heard of again. Rehoboam was left with a tiny nation. The one Jesus came to was a little tiny nation, 2 tribes, and they were all the remainder of Israel from then on. What I'm trying to explain here in this little story is the decision to double down on the policies of the past was a defining moment in the history of Israel. A defining moment. A defining moment is an event that determines all subsequent occurrences. The thing you do right now is going to determine all the things that come after this. A defining moment is a point of decision that determines the future, that sets parameters about what is possible. We all have defining moments in our lives. Maybe when you graduated from school, or maybe when you decided to drop out. Maybe when you had your first child. After that, everything is different. You ain't even living for you no more. At least not completely. A defining moment could be when you got married, could be when you got divorced. But a defining moment is going to affect everything that comes after it in your life is different as a result. This election is a defining moment in American history. Now, many people say, well, that's just hyperbole, he's just exaggerating, it's just an election. But this isn't just an election. It is a great moral and philosophical contest between the past and the future. It will decide if we're going to go backward or forward. It is shaping up to be our 3rd Civil War. The first one decided the issue of slavery. The second one decided the issue of civil rights for black people. And now the third one is a struggle to decide whether America is going to move toward a truly egalitarian society, an equal society, or if it's going to double down on preserving the racism, sexism, and discriminatory practices of the past. Now, I'm not saying that this election will resolve these issues once and for all. But what I am saying is that this is a defining moment, and it will determine the direction of the country for a long time to come. Donald J. Trump is the worst and most unqualified candidate for president in the history of America. He's running against, ironically, the most qualified presidential candidate in American history. He has no record of ever doing anything for anybody in his life. He ain't got no old ladies he helped cross the street. He ain't got nobody to come. Nobody came and said, well, he did me a kindness. He gave me a break. He gave me a leg up. He gave me a job. He helped me out. Nobody. He is an unashamed, unrepentant, pathological liar. That has been judged by fact checkers to only be telling the truth 29% of the time. That means 71% of the time that he's talking, he's lying. He has skillfully used Hitler's big lie technique, telling an outrageous bald-faced lie over and over and over again until people come to accept it as true. He spent 5 years trying to delegitimize the first African-American president as a foreign-born Manchurian candidate on a Muslim mission to destroy America. According to NBC News, he has shifted his position on 20 major campaign issues a total of 124 times. His campaign is content-free. He doesn't explain what or how he's going to do anything. He just promises it's going to be terrific. You're going to be winning so much. I promise you greatness through me. He has been denounced in every major newspaper in America. Every one. He is the only political candidate in history to receive no endorsements from any newspaper editorial board in the whole country. He has been rejected by the Republican establishment. No past presidents support him. Few generals support him. He has proven to be thin-skinned and vindictive. He incites his supporters to do violence against people that criticize him or disagree with him. He publicly suggested that if he is not elected, gun owners may need to assassinate Hillary Clinton to keep their guns. His claim to fame is as a successful New York businessman. But the movers and shakers in New York say that Donald Trump is not a significant player. He has filed for bankruptcy 6 times. He lost $1 billion in 1 year. The ghostwriter who authored his book, The Art of the Deal, has debunked his claim to be a great businessman. He says Trump builds buildings with other people's money, then slaps his name on top as if he owns it. No business partners or stockholders have ever come forth to testify about how much money Donald Trump has made for them. A lot of people have come forth to testify how they lost money dealing with him. He's been sued over 4,000 times for failure to pay people he owed money. And everybody who is speaking on his behalf is a paid employee. He has insulted every minority group in the country. He has called Mexicans rapists, Arabs terrorists, black people lazy fools with nothing to lose. He's called women nasty, disgusting, and fat pigs. He has mocked the handicapped, insulted war heroes, stolen money from veterans, and reneged on paying employees. He has disrespected President Obama while praising foreign dictators. He has promised mass deportation and religious tests for non-white Christian Americans. He has invited Russian hackers to influence the election. He has reduced the dignity of a nationally televised debate for the highest office in the land by arguing about the size of his genitalia. And you know if you got to make the argument. He is an admitted sexual assaulter. He has dynamited the whole Republican Party, creating a virtual civil war that's crippled the whole organization. And he has irresponsibly and dangerously challenged the integrity of the democratic system by claiming that it is rigged, thus threatening to make the peaceful transition of power impossible. He told an article for the Daily Beast a couple of weeks ago, an author for the Daily Beast a couple of weeks ago. He said, for the most part, you can't respect people because most people aren't worthy of respect. He is a rude, crude, narcissistic egomaniac, a racist, a sexist, and a bloviating ignoramus. I tell you all this to tell you this. He is a despicable human being. Any one of these things would be disqualifying for almost anybody else. Can you imagine Obama just having one of these issues? He couldn't even get in the door. He is a despicable human being, but none of this makes any difference to the people who are supporting his candidacy. Here, just hours before election day, he is in a virtual dead heat in the race to become the 45th president of the United States. A dead heat. Even Steven. The margin of error could flip it either way. This can only be explained by the fact that the people supporting him are fighting for something more important than qualifications. morality, decency, or even the welfare of the country. They are fighting for power. They're fighting for power. The ability to control the direction of things. They don't care who's up there talking. They're fighting for power. And they understand it. And we don't. The primary power instrument in American society has always been the social construct of whiteness. Throughout American history, whiteness has been the primary organizing people, joining people together. Organizing principle, joining people together. Before America, there was no such thing as white people. There were Anglos and Saxons and Celts and Scots and Spaniards and Frenchmen and Germans and Slavs and Poles and Aryans and Scandinavians and Jews and others. But by creating whiteness, the whiteness construct, European peasants coming to America were elevated to the overclass in exchange for their social promotion. They were enlisted in maintaining control over the slave population as paddy rollers and militia and law enforcement officers. And the basic foundation for maintaining white power has been set in motion from that day to this. Everything that has happened since then has been based on this foundation. From the time of the founding of America, the official immigration policy of the American government was to maintain America as a white nation. The United States Naturalization Law of 1790, that's right, 1790, when the Constitution was created. The Naturalization Law of 1790 said, citizenship is limited to free white persons of good character. The black population continued to grow, and the black population was necessary economically. So the American government decided they had to recruit more Europeans to immigrate to America to maintain that balance of 1 to 10, to make sure there were always 10 times more white people in the country than black people. This didn't happen by happenstance, it was a strategy. They lured Europeans with the unheard of promise of free land, something that was totally impossible in Europe because all the land was controlled by the king and the upper classes. When they made you a baron or a duke, they gave you land. And everything on the land and all the people on the land were yours to control. So there was no land to get in Europe. And people who didn't have land or hadn't been given a commission by the king, they had no way of ever having land except to work for somebody that had land. And so they were called peasants. They worked the land. After systematically killing and then relocating Indians to reservations on the most barren and worthless land in the country, they populated the American wilderness with countless white people. You kind of see this in cowboy movies, but you really don't understand what's happening because you're watching the white hats and the black hats. But what really is happening is the railroads are coming out into the wilderness. And with the railroads come millions of people looking for free land that they can work, that they can own. And this land has been uniquely the only place in the world. This land is being promised to people who are of European descent is in America. Them plantations down there in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, what you think the land was just laying there? It was full of Indians.
That's right.
They had to move the Indians. They had to kill and then move the Indians and put them out in New Mexico,
That's right.
in Oklahoma, in the most barren and desolate strips of land. And so this doesn't have anything on it, you can have this. And then they built gigantic plantations in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. The Texas Revolution was a war by Southern planters who needed more land for cotton. And they instigated a war with Mexico to take Texas away from the Mexicans. It opened Texas up for slavery and cotton. It was all part of a plan. When the black population continued to grow and they ran out of acceptable white people to bring into the country, they started to import what they desired to be undesirable Europeans who had not up to this time been considered as white. First it was the Irish, then it was the Italians, and then it was the Jews. They were promoted into whiteness because they ran out of other white people to find. Later on, they brought in the Polish, who they were sure were mentally retarded. There's a book called The Myth of Race. Look it up. And it'll tell you about the history of racism in this country and how it developed. How all these white groups were considered inferior too. The Jews and the Italians, they said they had too much African blood. But when they all got promoted to whiteness, they were promoted to whiteness for a reason. It was a power tool. There's no such thing. They created a power tool. Whiteness meant that if you were black, you wasn't in the power group. Throughout American history, the reinforcement of the construct of whiteness has been critical in maintaining white supremacy. Now, white Americans, they really never understood all this. They didn't understand the importance of whiteness to their privileged position, their psychological self-esteem, or their sense of superiority. So they could always say, y'all people could do better if y'all just work hard like we do. The fact that the whole society was arranged for their success, they don't really understand it. And they said, well, if you can't succeed like I succeed, it must be something defective about you. They don't see the barriers and boundaries that are created for black people. All their advantages were taken for granted as the natural order of things. But today, as a result of a growing black population, changes in the immigration laws allowing non-white people from around the world to come in, and white people's declining birth rates and accelerated death rates, a demographic tsunami has risen that was not really acknowledged or understood until too late. White people are rapidly becoming a numerical minority in their own country. A country that was 90% white in 1950 is today a little more than 50% white today. Think about it. If you grew up watching Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver, Mr. Ed, the Beverly Hillbillies, and all these shows from the 60s, from the 50s, Father Knows Best, you saw a world where it didn't seem like there was any black people in it. I think it was one Hazel that had a black cook, and she was always in the kitchen. The only time she came out the kitchen was to deliver some food. These shows reflected the mentality. It was a country that was 90% white. Most of us born over 40 were born into a country where our recollections of our country that was mostly white. Because it was mostly white. But today the numbers are shrinking, and now it's just a little over 50% white. That's why the TV programs look different. They have only recently, basically since Barack Obama's election as president in 2008, recognized the fact that minority status would change their privileged position. They now realize that in the new demographics, white privilege, white self-esteem, and most importantly, white supremacy would all be threatened. See, racism is a socially derived mental illness. You're crazy when you're racist. You're crazy. What you believe is at odds with objective reality. So it's like if you think you Napoleon, you can believe it all you want to, but you crazy. You might believe you can fly. And I don't care what that song says. They're saying that metaphorically. You cannot jump off this building and think that you're going to land. No, that you're going to land in the way you want to. Not even Jesus bit that pork chop. Not even Jesus said, throw yourself down from the pinnacle of the temple. No. There's a thing called gravity. Racism is a socially derived mental illness. And after centuries of investment and training in this kind of insanity, it's hard to simply change your mind. So locked in their racist mindset, American baby boomers are having a nervous breakdown. Baby boomers are defined as people born after World War II, when all the soldiers came home and everybody got a home and they got money and jobs and homes built for them and they had a lot of children. So there's a big bulge in the population. People between 40s that were born between 1946 and 1964 were the largest segment of the population. A lot of us are in that baby boom bulge. Well, white baby boomers are having a nervous breakdown. They're between 50 and 70 years old. And they're having a hard time. Psychologists report older white Americans are dying at a much more rapid rate than white baby boomers in other parts of the world. They say white Americans are dying from depression, alcoholism, and drug addiction, largely caused by their sudden awareness of the possible loss of white privilege. In an article in the Atlantic magazine from January of this year, it says, late last year, a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that middle-aged white Americans have been getting sicker and dying in greater numbers, even as the rest of the world is living longer and healthier. The authors of that study attributed the trend to what we call despair deaths, mainly suicide, drug overdoses, and alcohol-related liver disease. That means not only are middle-aged white people drinking more, using more opioids, and killing themselves at higher rates, more of them are getting sick with the diseases that usually kill older people. And when they do get sick, they don't get better. That's the power of psychology, of what you believe. Now, they're going through all this. We don't really know about it. So they kind of catching us with our pants down. White people over there going crazy, and, we got the same complaints we always had. And black people have absolutely no comprehension of the profound existential crisis that many white people are experiencing and what's motivating them to do what they're doing by supporting the worst candidate in the history of the world. They are having a hard time facing life in a country that's been basically 400 years of affirmative action for white people. Now a certain segment of the white population is desperately fighting to what amounts to Custer's last stand. They figure this is it. This is it. We don't win this one, it's over. So they're in a desperate last-ditch effort to preserve white privilege and white supremacy at all costs. And they ain't not having these conversations out in the light of day so they can be heard by you and me. They're private conversations being held in churches, barbershops, beauty shops, civic clubs, country clubs, block clubs, union halls, in their private homes. Their fear and anxiety first led to the establishment of the Tea Party. How can this black man be president? So the Tea Party rises up, but the Tea Party wasn't big enough to do anything really than to elect some crazy people to Congress. When the Tea Party failed to turn the tide, they turned to a messianic savior who embodies everything about what it means to be white in America. See, in this kind of America, you can be an idiot and a fool and still be president of the United States. And as long as you're white. And they said, now that's what I'm talking about. That's what we want. So they're supporting Donald J. Trump's effort to make America white again. Make America white again. And Donald Trump is a salesman by nature. And he's selling it. He's selling it. He's selling it. He ain't talking to you. You say, he crazy. How can he say that? That's wrong. He ain't talking to you. He knows who he's talking to. He's a despicable human being, but I didn't say he was a fool. He ain't stupid. He knows he's going to ride these fires of anxiety all the way into the White House. See, about 30% of white people, mostly the young and or well-educated, they really don't agree with taking America backwards. They don't agree with all these people out here in the Rust Belt who sitting around high on heroin and wanting the country to go back to what it used to be. You got about 30% of white people, either the young ones who grew up with Bill Cosby in a different world, and all that, they don't find it all that threatening. They went to integrated schools. They don't really find it all that threatening. That's what you're talking about. We wouldn't have no hip-hop if it wasn't for black people. They don't find it all that threatening, and so they don't agree with taking America backwards. And they're not threatened by a more egalitarian America. Matter of fact, they think it's a pretty good thing. So they have come to the conclusion that white people are going to have to learn to share the future, and that there's still enough power and privilege to go around for everybody. Bill and Hillary Clinton represent this point of view. But the older baby boomers and less educated are terrified because whiteness is really all they have left that separates us from them. For them, this is life and death, blessing or curse. So they're on a mission to make America white again, and they don't care if the candidate is Donald Trump or Donald Duck. He's just a symbol. They see this as their last hope to preserve white supremacy. The candidate doesn't make any difference. They said once he gets in there, sensible people, we just need the power. Now this is all cause terrible splits between white groups. We don't hear much about it. Like the white evangelicals, who are supposed to be rooted in Christian morality, have come out, and 71% of white evangelicals overwhelmingly support Donald Trump. But some of the young evangelicals who adhere to the biblical teachings literally are confused by the older white evangelicals who overlook all of Donald Trump's obvious flaws, liabilities, and moral failings, and enthusiastically back him anyway. You know, at Liberty University, Liberty University is the largest Christian university in the country. It's founded by Jerry Falwell, the founder of the Moral Majority and the famous Christian conservative preacher. He's died and his son has taken over the university. And they kind of upset that their president and the university has supported Donald Trump. They say he stands against everything we are against. And so students wrote an open letter to the president and the university. It says, we are Liberty students who are disappointed with President Falwell's endorsement and are tired of being associated with one of the worst presidential candidates in American history. Donald Trump does not represent our values, and we want nothing to do with him. Now, these are young people. See, white evangelicals have always played this game that, we just Christian and we conservative and we like our heritage, but we ain't racist. We ain't racist. We'll even have a black fella come preach for us every now and then. We ain't racist. Don't lay that at our door. But the truth is, they racist more than anything else. They violated all of their tenets. And the young people sit there saying, you just violated everything you taught me my whole life to support this man, and I don't understand why. And they can't come out and say it. Even white families have been torn apart by this issue. White families have... We had an Emory professor come to church a few weeks back, and he told me a story about a white student that he had that came to school and was looking distraught, and he was normally gregarious and participatory in the class and everything, and he was just looking distraught, just messed up. And before the class was over, he said, "Professor, can I see you?" And he said, "Sure, see you after class." He said, but he sat there looking so bad, he figured this might be some kind of emergency, so he dismissed class so he could talk to this student. And the little white fella told him, "I've been thrown out of my house." He said, "Thrown out of your house?" He said, "When?" He said, "I was thrown out on Friday." He said, "This is Monday." He said, "Where have you been?" He said, I've been sleeping in the parking lot in my car." And he said, "What happened?" He said, "I was working in the Obama campaign. And my father, when he found out about it, he told me, I told you about working for that damn nigga. Get out of my house and don't come back." And the professor was telling me that he'd had a number of white students who's had problems with their own family, at barbecues, at Thanksgiving, at weddings, over their racist political views. And they were saying, "I ain't know my family felt like this." So it's creating friction all over the place. New York Times writer Paul Krugman explains what's going on. And he said, a lot more Americans than we'd like to think, than we'd like to imagine, are white nationalists at heart. Donald Trump has moved white nationalism from part of the supporting cast to a starring role. See, what you have to understand is Paul Krugman is a white man. But he says more of the country than we like to think. They basically white nationalists more than the Americans. And when you think America is all this big rainbow of colors and traditions, that ain't what they thinking. And so this is why normally intelligent people seem so stupid when they're defending the indefensible in their support of Donald Trump. They have to try to point to some reasonable reason for supporting Trump when no reasonable reason exists. So they between a rock and a hard place. They supposed to got reputation and stuff, they on TV, and they're supposed to sound intelligent. And they got to sit there and try to make sense out of nonsense. They're saying they can't say why. So they can't say out loud we're supporting him to preserve white privilege. So they have to say he's right when they know he's wrong. They have to say he's telling the truth when they know he's lying. They have to say he's smart when they know he's dumb. They can't say they're supporting him to preserve white supremacy, white privilege, and the American way of life. Now, this wouldn't normally be a problem, because despite their best efforts, with almost all of the non-white vote and 30% of the white vote, the 30% that ain't bothered by all of this, and all of the non-white vote, Hillary Clinton would have a majority, a small statistical advantage. The Trump campaign's only hope is to suppress the vote. Suppress the minority vote in particular. But to suppress the vote, period. Number one, by making it difficult to vote. Just make it hard. Long lines. 4 or 5 hours. Suppress the vote. Close down the DMVs so people can't get IDs. Suppress the vote. Number two, make the election so nasty that it turns off a number of people. Man, this is such a mess. Forget both of them fools. Make it so nasty, so ugly, so disgusting that you say forget the whole thing. And number three, turn out that 50% of white people that never vote. Ever, 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 ever. Go get them hillbillies out of Appalachia, get them to vote. Go get them people out of the bars, get them to vote. That 50% that never votes, get them to vote. And then win over that small margin of people in the middle who are yet undecided. This election is designed to be negative and crazy and ugly and hateful and disgusting. It's designed to turn your stomach, to reduce this whole process to a mess that you say, I'm washing my hands. Tired of this. It's crazy. That's what they want. Because as soon as you wash your hands and you don't vote, all those that's on a mission going to vote twice. By focusing on the negative, Hillary Clinton is playing defense all the time. Her approval rating as Secretary of State was 90%. Now, the day she announced she was running for president, they started throwing mud on her image and just repeating all kind of just crazy stuff until people start believing it. She can't get out. She can't say anything. She's always on defense. She's always defending something. She can't say what I would do, what I would like to do, what I believe in. She's always defending some charge. Every time somebody stick a microphone in her face, she got to be on defense. It takes all the attention off her obvious positives, experience and compassion and effectiveness. Trump has effectively turned the election into a reality TV show. Yes. Yeah. Deliberately keeping the focus on scandals, accusations, conspiracies, and lies, so that no matters of policy or substance can be discussed. All this works to his advantage and to her disadvantage. They have already dredged up so much animosity that win or lose, there is an alt-right convention scheduled for Washington, D.C. on November 18th at the Ronald Reagan Building to discuss the next steps on the white agenda. So much rage has been created that now uncontrollable pockets of white people are threatening race war, revolution, and assassination if Clinton wins. Win or lose, we are headed into a totally new reality. So this is a defining moment. Which direction will we go? Forward or backward? Forward toward a more open, diverse, and equal society, or backward to double down and reinforce America's racist past? Now, at this defining moment, black people could make a difference. Could. But some black people are confused about the significance of the moment. I mean, some black people, rightfully so, got some personality issues with Hillary Clinton. They don't like the way the Clinton Foundation dealt with Haitian disaster relief, or they hold Bill Clinton responsible for the crime bill that sent a disproportionate number of black people to jail. And all these things are fair points of concern. But what you got to understand is if you're in a decision-making position in life, you're going to make some decisions that people like and some they don't like. I tell you that from personal experience. You can't really judge people, a person in a decision-making position, based on one thing you didn't like. You have to look at their long track record and see how have you been helped, how have you been aided, how have things been made better over a long period of time. The fact that this one thing they tried to do may have had some unintended consequences if they were trying to do the right thing. But I understand, you raise all this money for Haiti, they have a hurricane, the Clinton Foundation sends billions of dollars down there to give to the Haitian people, and then the corrupt Haitian leadership steal it all. I understand. It never got to the people. I understand. But that ain't what we're talking about here. Black people from 35 to 50 are not high on Hillary Clinton. So they talking about staying home. Black involvement in the election is down from the last election in terms of absentee ballots and early voting. See, these black people have been spoiled by 8 years of having a black president. They're not old enough to remember when the only choices black people ever had were bad choices. They're not old enough to remember that our only choice was to pick the one that was less bad. That's been most of our voting history. We got to pick the one that was the least bad. We picked the person that was least bad not for their sake, but for ours. This past week, last Sunday, Minister Farrakhan gave a 4-hour speech denouncing both candidates as devils and advocating not voting. Now let me say as a disclaimer, I like Minister Farrakhan. He's a friend of mine. We sat down and talked. And I think he's done a lot of courageous things for black people. He's spoken out and said things that needed to be said when other people wouldn't say them. He said some crazy stuff too. But by and large, he's had a heart for black people and trying to do the right thing. But in this instance, he's wrong. He's wrong. Talking to people all over the country in a 4-hour speech, saying that both of the candidates were devils and advocating not voting is not responsible leadership to black people. Cornel West is advocating throwing your vote away on a third-party candidate. And when you do either one of these things, you are voting for Trump. See, we still have to live in this country no matter who the president is. Our children have to still go to school in this country. And we ought to care something about how it's run. Who's in charge of it? This is an election. It's not a popularity contest. We're not picking a prom date. We ain't trying to get married. This is a struggle for power. We don't even have to like the person. Certain people are sympathetic to our interests, and other people don't give a damn. We don't have to like them. We just have to know where our interests lie. See, when this election is over, somebody is going to have power and somebody is going to be without it. One candidate has a track record of trying to look out for black people, and the other has a track record of screwing over black people and everybody else. If you think both of these turds stink, then hold your nose and vote for the one that stinks the least. Because you're going to be stuck with it for the next 4 years. We got to be more sophisticated. See, we're not really voting for candidates. We're voting for interests. We're voting for the interests the candidates represent. The next president is going to pick 3 to 4 Supreme Court justices to lifetime terms. The next president is going to choose 80 federal judges. The next president will decide whether the Affordable Care Act will be strengthened or abolished. The next president will decide if we're going to have law enforcement reform or stop and frisk law enforcement escalation by an over-militarized police force. The next president will decide to send your children to war. Hillary Clinton has proposed giving $25 billion to historically black colleges and universities in her first year in office. That's just year one. She has proposed hundreds of billions of dollars to put people to work rebuilding America's infrastructure, roads, bridges, public works, power plants, public transportation. She has proposed there being no charge for students to go to any college or university, public college or university in the country. Go to school free. But they ain't talking about that on CNN. They're talking about scandals and lies and keeping the whole thing in the mud. And we so dunderheaded, we ain't read the platform to know any of the things that either one of them support. Because if you read both of them, you said, well, ain't no way I can support that. And this don't sound so bad. But we making our choice based on the personalities that are being put in front of our face. No matter who is running for president, we still have interests. We don't have to love the president. We don't have to marry the president. We don't even have to like the president. We just need a president that is sympathetic to our interests. Our people have as much, if not more, invested in this country as anyone else. And we have a right to have our interests served. And we will be fools to voluntarily walk away from our investment because some confused Negroes are advocating it. We are in a struggle for power. We need to vote like the house is on fire. It's a struggle for power. And I know that it's hard for us to understand because we vote for people we like. We support people we like. We want to give support and to stand next to people we like. You missing the point. Does the person represent your interests? They could be a scoundrel or a dog, but are they going to do what you want done for you, your family, and your community? You don't have to like them. This is a very immature level of struggling for something. I don't like them, so I'm not going to support it. A lot of that going on in the church, you know. Oh, who's running it? Oh, well, I'm not coming. I'm not coming because I don't like them. Whose church is it? Everything that goes in there is for your interest. The person standing up front don't make no difference whatsoever. But we all on this infantile level. We 5 years old in the sandbox of the playground. I don't like them. Don't play with them. Make no mistake. We are fighting for the direction of the country. Donald Trump and his supporters represent everything that's wrong with America. Using your vote to punish Hillary, or because you are not enthusiastic about her candidacy, or because of any other reason, is to help usher in a new era of racism, police repression, and mass incarceration for all black people. We still got a long way to go. We think we're pretty sophisticated, and I guess compared to the past, we are sophisticated. But black people, we still got a long way to go. We have to learn to struggle for our interests by any means necessary. Maybe we're not yet ready to struggle for power. We still want to deal with who we like. We've been trained to be disorganized, confused, and difficult. We've been conditioned to reject intelligent collective action designed to change our condition. We've been conditioned to practice insanity. So a whole lot of us get up every day and practice insanity all day long. It may take another 20 to 30 years for the masses of black people to be ready to engage in a serious struggle for power. We may need a boot in our butt for another generation to learn to ignore all these petty concerns and focus on what's most important. We have to get to the point that we understand that the first fact of our existence is that we're black. Not that we're women, not that we're men, not that we're Democrats or Republicans or Christians or Muslims or live on the east side or the west side or up north or down south. Those things are all secondary and tertiary considerations. The most important fact of our existence is that we are black. Everything else is a family fight. We settle that inside. Historically, we are still in the early stages of black people trying to regain what we once were. That's why it may seem sometimes that the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church is crying loud in the wilderness and preaching to empty chairs. A lot of times it may seem like our living might be in vain. We out here hollering about something people don't want to hear. But we're going to keep on hollering because we understand that we are part of the process of helping black people to regain their consciousness. They haven't regained it yet. We're part of the process of them helping. Our presence is helping them regain their consciousness and their full humanity. And we'll know when we've gotten there because full human beings do not accept mistreatment as normal and inevitable. We have to learn how to stick together and make people pay for violating our common interests. We have to learn to drive them out of business, destroy their careers, send them to jail, hound them to the ends of the earth, and to make an example of anybody that messes with us. There has to be consequences for doing violence to the interests of black people. Whether you white, black, or anything else, there got to be consequences when you mess with the general interests of black people. Prayer is not going to do it. Jesus is not going to do it. God is not going to do it. We are going to have to learn to stick together and do it ourselves. There got to be consequences for messing with us. We're in a struggle for power. You know, Flint broke into public consciousness more than a year ago. This whole population of people poisoned, children destroyed, future ruined. The water in Flint is just as messed up today as it was when it came out. Because our interest goes with the news cycle. The people in Flint are still poisoned. Any child being born is still getting messed up. And we ain't done nothing about it. We've moved on to other things. I bet you one thing. I bet you if there were Jews up there, something would have been done. Because they know how to stick together and how to make people respect their interests. You're going to have problems. There are going to be consequences. When they come together to deal with you, you're going to feel it. It's going to hurt. And you're going to scream and holler until you do something about what they want. We got to learn to do that. So today we come to a defining moment, and I'm going to leave you with a little story. A big plantation owner died. He found himself at the pearly gates. But before the gate opened, the angel came out and said, we want to be fair. So we want to kind of show you around so you can decide where you'd like to spend all of eternity. So we're going to show you heaven and hell so you can make up your mind. The man said, okay, that sounds pretty good. So the gates opened up and he showed him around heaven. It was breathtakingly beautiful, peaceful, calm, and pleasant. All kinds of people were together in fellowship, drinking, eating, laughing. Everybody was happy. All their needs were satisfied. And the man said, this is great. Maybe it's the way it should have been all the time. Then the angel said, come on, let's go check out hell. So they got in the elevator. They went down, 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 down. Finally, the elevator stopped. The door opened up. And there were people everywhere having a good time. Music was playing. Drinks were flowing. The most delicious food was everywhere. The people were so immaculately dressed. He saw women so beautiful he couldn't believe it. A lot of the people that he knew were there. He saw his old friends. Hey, Jim, how you doing? I was good to see you. And they hugged and laughed. Oh, you're going to have a great time down here. And he pulled some of his old friends aside and asked, this can't be hell, can it? His friends told him, you know, back where we're from, hell gets a bad rap. It's nothing like we're told. The media has a bias against hell. And there's a big conspiracy to keep us out of here. He ate the finest food. He drank the best liquor. Everybody was so friendly. It was absolutely the best time he ever had. Finally, the angel came and said, All right, it's time to go. They got back in the elevator, went up and 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 up. And when the door opened, the angel says, you got a lot to think about. Where you're going to spend all of eternity is a big decision. So we're going to let you sleep on it and get your decision in the morning. The man said, okay. He thought about it all night. The next day the angel came back and said, okay, what's it going to be? Heaven or hell? The man scratched his head and said, you know, it was really a hard decision, but you know, I think I'd rather go to hell. Just felt more comfortable down there. Just my kind of people. The angel said, okay, well, we'll get you down there quick as we can. Good luck with your decision. So the man got in the elevator and went down, 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 down. The elevator stopped. The door opened up. And all of a sudden it felt like somebody had opened the door to the oven. It wasn't just hot. It was the worst odor he had ever smelled. It was dusty and smoggy and he couldn't see. Then when the smoke cleared, he saw people as far as the eye could see. Emaciated, hungry, sores all over their body, thirsty, miserable, crying, howling, fighting. Then the devil stepped out and put his arm around him. Said, welcome to hell, son. And the man said, I don't understand. What happened to all the music and the food and drinks, the beautiful people and the parties I saw yesterday? And the devil said, oh, well, yesterday we were campaigning. Today, you voted.